Okay, I'm going to get started by welcoming all of you guys. Welcome to Wat Tung. Nice to see all of you guys here this morning. Welcome to everyone online as well. Today is our Pali Canon and English study group where we start with meditation and then we move into studying the original words of the Buddha to help students on the path to enlightenment. So welcome to everyone here. Welcome to everyone online. Whether you're joining us for the first time or you're joining regularly, welcome to everyone. The way we start with meditation is we start with some chanting to ease us into the meditation. If you'd like to join with the chanting, we have the chants on a laminated sheet over there on the cabinet. You're welcome to help yourself to get one of the chanting sheets because we'll be chanting in the Pali language, and this is a language that has been used in order to capture the original teachings of the Buddha. You'll see the English translations on those as well, and if you see those, you're going to see a lot of appreciation, gratitude, and respect for the Buddha because he helped people to get to this enlightened mental state where the mind can be peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. It's a permanent mental state where you no longer experience any anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. All these feelings are eliminated from the mind when you train your mind. So the students had a lot of appreciation and gratitude for the Buddha. So I suspect that's where these chants came from. Either during his life or after his death, his students probably created these chants as a way to show respect and gratitude to him. A Buddha wouldn't walk around with arrogance and ego and say, here, chant these things to me out of respect to me. So that's how I know that the Buddha didn't create these. So I use these nowadays in order to ease the mind into meditation. But during the lifetime of the Buddha, they used chanting as a way to commit the teachings to memory, that every 2 weeks they would come together and they would recite his teachings word for word in order to commit them to memory. So this isn't a rite, a ritual, or a ceremony or worship. It's not prayer or anything like that. There's nothing mystical or magical happening when you're chanting. It actually helps you to build awareness of the mind and awareness of the breath as you're easing into meditation to get you more benefit out of the meditation. That's the real purpose for it today. After we're in the meditation, I'm going to start providing you guidance where I'm actually going to be instructing you and guiding you in the meditation as we're actually doing it. Then we're going to have a period of time where it's just quiet and we're just all meditating together. Everyone here and everyone online can be meditating together at the same time. I'm sure you're going to hear an occasional sound here or there because you're not going to be able to be in an environment where it's permanently quiet. That's not possible because of impermanence. The world's constantly changing. If you have a craving for permanence, when you hear a sound or something like this, you'll be frustrated, you'll be annoyed, but that's your own mind that's causing that. You can get to the point where you understand that the world around you is impermanent and you're not going to experience something like permanent quietness. So when you hear a car go by or maybe a bird chirping or a dog barking, you can just understand that these things are impermanent and that they're going to just arise, they're going to change, and they're going to fade away. You're going to hear me giving you guidance about focusing on the breath. And when the mind moves off the breath, you come back to the breath each time. So after that period of quiet where we're just all meditating, excuse me, breakfast is still in there, little pepper in the back of the throat. After that period of time where we're just quiet and we're just all meditating together, then we're going to come out of the meditation with some more chanting. And that's where I'll start today's class, helping you guys understand the teachings that we're going to be sharing as part of the Pali Canon and English study group. In terms of your body positioning for meditation, the Buddha taught 4 positions: seated, lying, standing, and walking. And you would use these different positions at different times for different reasons. And you can learn these in the various courses and retreats that I share to help you to understand how to use these different positions. But oftentimes people are starting in the seated position. So I'll give you guys a little bit of guidance on that just to help you get started. But just keep in mind that what I'm sharing with you is just suggestions or guidance. You need to find whatever's comfortable for you. There's not just one way to sit in meditation. There's countless different ways that you could potentially sit. Oftentimes people are sitting on the floor in a chair. You can sit however you're comfortable. Maybe if you're at home, you're on a bench or a sofa or in a wheelchair or something like this. You can sit however you're comfortable. What some people like to do if they're on the floor is they have cushions under their rear to kind of soften their seat. And then if you're going to cross your legs, you just like to bring those together lightly. Whereas if they're real tight, it could impede the circulation and cause pain in the lower body. Some people like to put their legs off the mat. This gets their hips up in the air and it lessens the angle at the hips, the knees, and the ankles, and it allows the circulation to flow in the lower body. The Buddha put his right hand over his left with his thumbs together, and he put that into his lap. If that's comfortable for you, you could use it, but there's other options as well. You could put your palms on your thighs or on your knees. Some people like to put their palms up. Some people rest their hands comfortably in their lap. So whatever you'd like to do, it's really up to you. The upper body is nice if this is erect with the sternum up and the shoulders back. This will keep the mind attentive and alert during the meditation and make it easy for you to meditate, because your mind needs to be attentive and alert during the meditation, because this is a dedicated, active, purposeful training session where you're eliminating certain unwholesome qualities and cultivating certain wholesome qualities. So you need your mind to be attentive and alert during that period. And anybody who is either sitting in a chair or on a sofa or a bench or a wheelchair or something like this, you can also sit however you're comfortable. Some people like to put their feet flat on the floor or lightly cross at the ankles, but you can see me, I'm in a chair here with my legs crossed, so this is an option too. And then you can put your hands and your arms wherever you like, just like if you're sitting on the floor. And then the same thing with the upper body, having that erect keeps the mind attentive and alert, because if you were slouched like this, the mind would be dull or lethargic potentially, or if you were real rigid, the mind could be overactive or uptight. So you'd like the upper body to be in the middle, because not only does it help you to be more attentive and alert with your mind, but it makes it easier for you to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. So again, I'm going to get us started with the chanting, which you guys are welcome to join along in, and then I'll come back in with the guidance for the meditation. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakawa Bhutang Mahakavanhang Apivateyami Savakato Mahakavata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Mahakawa Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakatoro Kavitu Anutero Purisa Dhammasati Satatawa Manusanang Bhutto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you'd like to just establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath, not forced or controlled, Just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมะคะวะพุทธังมะคะวันนังอภิวาเทมิ สวากขาโตมหาควตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาควโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมะหะควะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาธัมมาสติสัตตาตาวะมนุสรังโอโตภะคะวะติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly ease your way out of meditation. Once again, welcome to all of you guys. Welcome to Wat Tung. Welcome to everyone joining us online. Nice to see all of you guys this morning. This was breathing mindfulness meditation. This is a meditation that's going to help you to train your mind to work towards the enlightened mental state. This is one of the primary forms of meditation that the Buddha used in addition to other teachings and other tools and techniques to move his mind to this enlightened mental state. For those of you guys that are here for the first time, I'm going to share a few things for you to help you feel even more comfortable. In the back of the room, there's two doors that are the bathrooms. You're welcome to get up and use the restrooms at any time that you like. If you go outside the classroom, there's signs that'll take you around to the main temple bathrooms. You can use those at any time that you like. We even have snacks and refreshments over here that are provided by our students. You're welcome to help yourself to anything that's over there. So today is what we refer to as the Pali Canon and English Study Group. And all the programs and courses and retreats that we have here is to help guide students to the enlightened mental state. And this program as well. What enlightenment is where the mind has been trained to uproot certain pollutions that are in the mind. And when you uproot these pollutions out of the mind, you'll get to a point where your mind's only experiencing peace, calm, serenity, and contentedness with joy. The mind no longer experiences any anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. All of these and others are eliminated from the mind through training of the mind. By the time you get to enlightenment, you don't even have the slightest displeasure in the mind. All the causes and conditions that are producing that have been uprooted and eliminated out of the mind. And by eliminating these pollutions out of the mind, you'll notice that the mind's focused and concentrated. It has clarity and deep memory. You'll notice that your personal and professional relationships are really blossoming. They'll be at ease. You won't have bitterness and harshness and hostility in your relationships any longer. You'll notice that you have this clarity and this peacefulness in the mind. You won't even be in a bad mood any longer because all the causes and conditions that produce those things have been uprooted from the mind. And this comes through training of the mind. You're not believing a bunch of things and hoping that something good happens when you die. It's also not about rules or commandments. Instead, the mind is learning and growing and developing. It's cultivating wisdom to be able to train in order to uproot these pollutions out of the mind. So all the various programs that we have here is to be able to help you to be able to learn and grow and develop on the path to enlightenment. But it's important that you don't believe any of the teachings, that you learn, examine, and investigate the teachings, that you reflect on them to independently verify whether they're true or they're false, and then you practice the teachings, integrating them into your day-to-day life. And that's where you'll actually see the real results in your day-to-day life. So we have various courses and programs that are going to help you in your journey, and everything's available to you at no cost. All the books and audiobooks, videos, podcasts, classes, courses, retreats, even personal guidance. The only thing that's standing in your way is your own effort and dedication and diligence to be able to move forward on the path and actually make real progress on the path. So the various programs that I have, they're based around this book series that I share. It's a 13-book series. And what students are typically doing is they're starting off in our first book, which is called Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. This is the very first book that helps you develop a foundation in the path to enlightenment. And you can get this for free. You can download it from our website. You can take it and go print it. You can get printed versions here by just reimbursing us for the printing cost, or you can order it on Amazon if you'd like. And that's the best place to start. And we have various foundational programs and courses that you can take in order to gradually learn the foundational teachings. And then we have other courses and programs that help you along even further. Oftentimes, once a student has developed a foundation in the path to enlightenment, they will come into a program like this, which is called the Pali Canon and English Study Group. What the Pali Canon is these are the original teachings of the Buddha. There's 45 volumes of books that are about this thick that document the teachings of the Buddha. It's the largest, most complete collection that we have of the teachings of the Buddha. And what this book series does is in volumes 2 through 13, it consolidates this down into a manageable, digestible amount of content that you could be learning and growing and developing, and learning that content and then practicing it in your day-to-day life. So in this Pali Canon English Study Group, rather than a traditional style of learning, which is what I typically do in all the other programs where I'm teaching for 15, 20, 30 minutes, opening up for questions, teaching another 15, 20, 30 minutes and opening up for questions. In this program, what we do is we study the original words of the Buddha like a study group. And today we happen to be starting this new book, which is called The Foremost Householder. This is a collection of teachings from the Buddha that is designed to help household practitioners, the people like you that are living in your own home and practicing the teachings. Because everybody and anybody can get to enlightenment. Not only ordained practitioners, but household practitioners can get to this enlightened mental state as well. And this entire book series documents the teachings of the Buddha, and you would need to learn all of those teachings. But this particular book kind of collects teachings specifically for household practitioners, but all the other teachings are for household practitioners too. But this is just kind of like targeted, very specific things related to household practitioners. So what we do in this program is I invite students here at the temple, and those of you guys that are in Zoom, if you'd like to volunteer, you can read one of these chapters. And what you do is you just read these chapters. These are the original words of the Buddha from his lifetime. And you can see these chapters are fairly short. This one's not even a page long. And after a student reads the particular chapter, I will then share some teachings on that, helping you guys for about 5 minutes or so, helping you to understand this. The Buddha's teachings are very clear, very concise, and very precise, but it really helps to have a dedicated practitioner and teacher kind of guiding you through, because some of his teachings are related to other teachings. And if you don't have that background, it's kind of helpful to have a teacher, like a tour guide, helping you through to understand what this one particular teaching is maybe connected to. So after someone reads this, I will then share some teachings on that for a period of time, and then I'm going to open up to any and all questions that you guys have related to this particular chapter. So if you guys would like to read here, volunteer to read, or if you'd like to ask a question, we have microphones in the white bowl in the middle of the room. All you need to do is get a microphone, press the gray button. You're going to see the lights are going to come on, and then you just hold that up to your chin, and we'll be able to hear you here at the temple, and they'll be able to hear you online as well. If you you speak here without a microphone, they won't actually be able to hear you online. So it'd be great if you speak with a microphone. And then you can just keep it with you, because you might have more than one question, or someone around you might have a question, and you can share the microphone. And if you're not using it, if you could just turn it off, that'd be helpful, because then we won't get feedback from the speakers. And for those of you guys in Zoom, if you would like to volunteer to read, all you need to do is raise your hand electronically, and then you'll be able to unmute your microphone, and then you can read and ask questions that way. And if you're in Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, and you would like to ask questions, you can put that into the comments section, and I'll be able to see your question, or you can raise your hand in Zoom, unmute your microphone, and ask any questions that you like. So is there anyone who would like to volunteer to read this very first chapter? Adrian, sure. Got a bunch of hot peppers in my mouth from breakfast.
Chapter 1. Household life is crowded and dusty. Monk, here the Tathagata appears in the world, accomplished, fully enlightened, perfect in true wisdom and conduct, superb, knower of worlds, incomparable leader of persons to be tamed, teacher of gods and humans, enlightened, fortunate. He declares to this world with its gods, its matas and its brahmas, this generation with its ascetics and brahmins, its princes and its people, which he has himself realized with direct knowledge experience. He teaches the teachings good in the beginning, good in the middle, and good in the end, with the right meaning and phrasing, and he reveals a holy life that is entirely perfect and pure. A householder or householder's son, or one born in some other clan, hears the teachings. On hearing the teachings, he acquires confidence in the Tathagata. Possessing that confidence, he considers thus: household life is crowded and dusty. Life gone forth is wide open. It is not easy, while living in a home, to lead the holy life entirely perfect and pure as a polished shell. Suppose I shave off my hair and beard, put on the yellow robe, and go forth from the home life into homelessness.
Okay, thank you, Adrian. So there's a lot of things to talk about here. First, a Tathagata is an actual Buddha. That's how the Buddha would refer to himself, is as the Tathagata. What this word means, that we think it means, is it means one who's discovered the truth, or one who shares the truth. Because a Buddha is an individual who discovers the truth about the natural laws that exist in the world and how to get to this enlightened mental state by themselves without the help of any teachers or any guides. So a Tathagata is one who shares the truth, or one who discovered the truth, and now they share it for the rest of their life, helping other people to be able to get to that enlightened mental state. And a Buddha is considered to be accomplished and fully enlightened, functioning perfectly with true wisdom in terms of their conduct. The Buddha would know the other worlds, meaning the 5 realms of existence. These are 5 realms that the Buddha taught during his lifetime. And then incomparable leader of persons to be tamed. That's essentially what you're doing with your own mind, is you're being guided of how to tame your mind. Because when your mind's unenlightened, your mind will pull in all these different directions, doing all these unwholesome things, making unwise choices in the world that lead to unwholesome results. This is part of why you experience the anger and frustration and all these other discontent feelings. So if a Buddha is an individual who is helping people to learn how to tame their mind. People also refer to the Buddha as a teacher of gods and humans, of course, enlightened and fortunate. So then it goes on here and talks about some other types of things too. Here, what I'd like to draw out is the Buddha is talking here about this actual world, where he says, which he has himself realized with direct knowledge. That's one of the distinctions between a Buddha and an actual average enlightened being is that they've actually discovered this path by themselves, where it says, which he has himself realized with direct knowledge. Through his own experience of living life, he figured out these natural laws that are affecting you, and then he's guiding you into understanding those natural laws. Because one of the reasons why the mind experiences anger and sadness and frustration and all these other discontent feelings is because you're living in a world that you don't understand. You go around the world and you keep experiencing various things from time to time, and your mind gets frustrated or agitated or annoyed because you want things to be a certain way. And when things are that way, you get happy or excited. But when you don't get things your way, then the mind gets angry or frustrated or agitated. You might think that other people are causing you to be angry or frustrated, but it's actually your own mind that's causing this. And when you understand this, then you understand that you can actually solve it. You can eliminate it. If it was everybody else who was causing you to be angry or frustrated or annoyed, you would have no ability to ever get to peace or ever get to permanent joy, because you can't train 8 billion people in the world to do things your way. So if you look at a recent time when you've been angry or sad or frustrated or irritated or some other feeling like this, you can see, if you look at it objectively, that there was something your mind was longing for. You were yearning for it. You were wanting something. And if you would have got it your way, you would have been happy. But because you didn't get what you wanted, your mind got angry or frustrated or annoyed or some other discontent feeling. This is called craving, desire, attachment, where the mind is longing, yearning, and holding on to things. And as long as your mind keeps doing this, you'll keep experiencing anger and frustration over and over and over again. And every unenlightened mind does this. You'll form your inner feelings based on some condition. So if it's sunny outside, you'll get really happy and really excited. But then when it rains, you'll be frustrated or agitated or annoyed. Or if your bank account balance is up here, you'll get really happy or really excited. But then when it goes down here, you'll get frustrated or agitated or annoyed or some other discontent feeling. And here you can see there isn't even another person involved. So it's not other people that are causing you to be angry and frustrated. It's actually your own mind that's causing this. And the beauty in understanding this is, once again, that because your mind is causing these feelings, you can actually eliminate them. And that's what the Buddha did. By himself, he figured out how to get to this enlightened mental state. And you can accomplish the same thing if that's what you choose to do, but you just wouldn't be able to do it by yourself. You're going to need help from teachers and guides to be able to help you along the way, but it's you doing the work, cultivating the wisdom and training your mind. And you're not believing any of the teachers. You're not believing any of the books. You're not believing anything. You're investigating and examining the teachings. You're reflecting on them to see if they're true or false. And then you're practicing bringing in these tools and techniques into your day-to-day life to train your mind. So here the Buddha says he teaches the teachings good in the beginning, good in the middle, and good in the end. The way that he encourages us to teach is that it's not like you start out strong and then you kind of fade off towards the end, or maybe you start out kind of lackluster and then you get really good in the middle of your talk and then towards the end you kind of fade out. He teaches you to maintain your strength of your discourse and the way that you're teaching all the way through, that you maintain your energy all the way through, because that's what an enlightened being can do, is that they don't slack off in their energy. They maintain their energy all throughout the day, where you probably get kind of exhausted sometimes in certain times of your day. You just feel tired and exhausted. An enlightened being doesn't experience that. Their mind is uplifted and bright and radiant, and they have sustainable energy all day long because they don't have those pollutions in the mind that is weighing them down. So as we teach teachings that are good in the beginning, the middle, and the end. And he encourages us to use the right meaning and phrasing, because how we talk about these teachings is really important, that we understand the vocabulary that we're using and we speak in a way that the students can understand, and then you can learn it and you can grow and develop on the path. And he talks about how the Buddha, he's saying how he reveals this holy life that is entirely perfect and pure. If you practice the teachings that the Buddha shares with you and you uproot these pollutions out of the mind will actually be purified. You'll be functioning in the world perfectly. You won't be causing harm to other beings, and then harm won't be actually coming back to you, because you'll be able to make wise decisions that are leading to wholesome results. Ultimately, what he gets to is he's talking about this individual who's living the household life. he builds confidence in the Buddha and in the teachings. And because he has this confidence, he decides to leave out of the home life and actually ordain and become an ordained practitioner. The Buddha used to refer to the household life as crowded and dusty, where going and getting ordained, he referred to it as life gone forth and it's wide open. And the reason why is that during his lifetime, the household life was very different than it is right now. 2,500 years ago, it was much harder to get to enlightenment as a household practitioner than it is today. Because 2,500 years ago, as a household practitioner, there was countless tasks that you needed to perform just to sustain your life. Think about if we lived 2,500 years ago. Just to get water in our home, it was like an all-day affair. We had to carry buckets from the well to the house for probably several hours just to fill up the trough in front of our house in order to have water at our house. And we might have had to do that 2 or 3 times a week just to get water in our house. And it would take a lot of time to do that. To get food and clothing and shelter and these kinds of things, it took lots and lots of time to be able to do that. So the household practitioners were very inundated with various tasks just to sustain their life. So they didn't have time to necessarily learn and come to the place where the teachings were being delivered. They didn't necessarily have the time to meditate and train their mind. Where today things have been really improved, where, for example, to get water, you just walk over to a spigot and turn the knob and boom, you've got water right away. And we forget how convenient that is because we didn't live during that time frame. But if you go back and look at how people lived during that time frame, it was much more challenging to sustain your life back then. And this is why people's lifespan was very short. You know, back in ancient times, they could live maybe till 30, 40 years old. You know, the Buddha actually lived to 80, which is really long for somebody 2,500 years ago. But the vast majority of people didn't live that long because there was so much work and they were inundated with tasks to be able to do. So it's understandable that the Buddha referred to the household life as crowded and dusty. Essentially, what he's talking about is it's challenging to get to enlightenment from the household life. But that was 2,500 years ago. Things nowadays are so improved that you have so much time on your hands, you probably fill it up with unbeneficial things. You probably spend several hours a week on things like social media or YouTube videos or doing other things that would be unwise for you, maybe certain unwholesome things. There's no harm in being on social media. There's no harm in watching YouTube videos, but it's when you can't put it down, that's your mind craving and holding on to it. You might pick it up and you might find that you're just scrolling and scrolling and scrolling mindlessly, and your mind is just craving and holding on to it, and you can't put it down. And you might spend an exorbitant amount of time doing things like this and other things that if you started to strip those things out of your life, you'll start seeing that you actually have a significant amount of time to do things like read books, to come to the temple, to meditate, to talk with a teacher and get help. So nowadays, household life is not crowded and dusty. It's not hard to get to enlightenment. It's challenging. It's not easy. It's not difficult, but it's challenging. But you need to gradually work your way towards the enlightened mental state. I actually live a household life. Sometimes people are confused. They think that I'm ordained, but in reality, I live in a home. I have a wife. I have a son. I'm not ordained, but I'm here to share with you that you can absolutely get to enlightenment as a household practitioner. There's no reason why you can't. The only thing that's holding you back is your own dedication, determination, and diligence. And you need to get to the point where you're so tired of those feelings of being sad and angry and frustrated, that you're done with the anger, you're done with the frustration, you're done with the guilt and the shame and the fear and the loneliness and the boredom and the shyness and the resentment and jealousy. And you're so done with this stuff that you're ready for something more, something better. And that's what the enlightened mental state is. And if you put in time and effort and energy and dedication to learning and growing, even in the household life, you can actually make your way to enlightenment. But you're going to need to learn and study the original words of the Buddha. You're going to need help and guidance along the way. And if you're here in Chiang Mai, you can learn here. And if you're not, we have the ability for you to come in through live stream or Zoom or any of these other ways. I also travel around the world. All these books and videos and podcasts are available to you. So there's no longer a barrier that you need to live right next to your teacher, because that was the case during the lifetime of the Buddha. You needed to live in the same vicinity that he was in order to be able to actually learn and grow and develop and practice the teachings. But now we've eliminated that barrier through the technology of live streaming and videos and podcasts and books and all these things that didn't exist during the lifetime of the Buddha. So the Buddha was basically saying how this individual, having gained confidence in him and his teachings, decided to enter into this life of homelessness. That's essentially what you're doing as a household or as a ordained practitioner. You're entering into a life of homelessness where you don't have a home, you don't have a car or transportation. All you basically have is 2 robes and a bowl. That's all you get as an ordained practitioner. Nowadays, they have mobile phones and things like this to be able to communicate, but essentially you have 2 robes and a bowl, and that's it. And that's to limit the amount of things that your mind can grab onto and hold on to in order to get attached to. But you don't have to eliminate your possessions in order to get to enlightenment. You can still have a phone, you can still have a house, you can still have a computer, you can still have a car, but you just need to learn how to do these things without craving, desire, attachment, where you're forming your inner feelings based on this thing. So if you had a car, for example, and you wanted this car to stay permanently beautiful, well, when it gets a scratch on it, you'll get angry or frustrated or agitated because your mind's not comfortable with impermanence, where things are constantly changing. Because that's the truth about the world is constantly changing. There's this impermanence. But what the unenlightened mind does is it'll crave permanence. It'll want things to be a certain way permanently. So you're going to need to learn how to have things like clothes and jewelry and friends and family and other material possessions and not be attached to them, where you want them to be a certain way permanently, and that way you won't form your feelings based on this thing. So for example, if you're really into your clothing or your jewelry and your clothes get ripped, you'll be frustrated and agitated when you see that. Or if you lose your jewelry, you'll be frustrated and agitated when you're losing your jewelry. So you need to learn how to be able to have these things, but just not be attached to them. And that's where the training comes in. There's a core central teaching that the Buddha shares. It's called the Eightfold Path. That's what a person would start out with, is they would start out learning the Eightfold Path. Here we're in volume 8, where we're beyond that. But if you would like to get started, that's where you really start. And that's what this first book will really help you get started with. So do you guys have any questions on this particular chapter? You can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or here you guys can raise your hand and ask any questions that you like. You have a question, Adrian?
Yeah, I got a couple of questions. So I'm understanding it from what we read and from what you said in a different way. When he says it's crowded and dusty as a householder, like you've said, you need to learn how to have your computer, how to have your mobile phone, to have all of your possessions and not be attached to them. Yet, like, he only had a bowl and his robe. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I'm understanding it like as him saying that, like, oh, you as a householder, it's going to be a little bit more challenging to get to enlightenment. Mm-hmm. Is that a correct kind of assumption?
Yeah. Yes, it's more challenging to get to enlightenment as a household practitioner, but that doesn't mean that it's not possible, right? And nowadays, I would say it's actually really challenging to get to enlightenment as an ordained practitioner, because one of the first things they're going to teach you as an ordained practitioner is to not why household practitioners. The ordained practitioners think they're above household practitioners, and household practitioners are below them. This is conceit. The Buddha never taught that. So right away, when you go into an ordained life, they're going to teach you, don't show respect to the household practitioners. They're supposed to respect you. They won't why you, mostly, 99.9% of the case. So right away, boom, you're not going to get to enlightenment because you got conceit in your mind because you think you're above other people. Now, this isn't true with all ordained practitioners, of course. Some ordained practitioners are practicing very closely and they understand them teachings very well, but the vast majority of them aren't actually practicing the teachings very closely. These individuals that the Buddha is talking about up here, these Brahmin, what these Brahmin are, these are Hindu priests that were essentially worshiping God during their lifetime. A Brahmin is someone who's helping people to get close to Brahma. Brahma during the lifetime of the Buddha was considered to be God. And what the people were taught is that you need to go to a Brahmin in order for them to do rites and rituals and ceremonies and worship on your behalf. And that's how you were going to have a better life. And in order to be a Brahmin, you were born into this family. About 15% of society was a Brahmin. And now all of us commoners, we were taught, not as part of the teachings of the Buddha, but as part of other traditions, that you couldn't improve your life. You had to go to these people and get help by paying them for a ceremony. So the Buddha knew that this wasn't true, and he was teaching people how to get to enlightenment and liberation. And he didn't teach any rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship. So slowly but surely, people were learning that and getting to enlightenment. But nowadays, 2,500 years later, the ordained practitioners have actually become the Brahmin. That oftentimes what people are doing is they're going to ordained practitioners, paying them money for a rite, ritual, ceremony, or worship. And because of this, it's not helping people to actually cultivate the wisdom that they need to actually get to enlightenment. So in my experience, what you'll find is the household practitioners in a large majority of the times are actually practicing the teachings closer than ordained practitioners. And because of this, I would say nowadays that household practitioners are closer to getting to enlightenment than even ordained practitioners. This idea that the Buddha only had 2 robes and a bowl, that's what he actually did. He walked away because he was a member of the royal family. He was a prince destined to become a king, and he stripped down his possessions to a bare minimum to be able to help his mind not to have attachment and be able to get to enlightenment. And that's one option. Somebody can do it that way, but that's not the only way. Right? There's multiple ways to be able to get to enlightenment. What you need to do for your mind, what you need to do to train your mind is the same, whether you're ordained or unordained, but the lifestyle you live, whether you're ordained or unordained, that's different. In order to get to enlightenment, you don't have to be ordained. You don't have to have 2 robes and a bowl in order to get to enlightenment. You can actually get to enlightenment with all these other things. You're just going to need to learn how to do it. So for example, you're going to need to distance yourself from this mobile phone for a period of time. You might go away from it for a few days, or at different times, you might leave it at home for a few hours and go outside without it and learn how to go outside and be peaceful and joyful without your mobile phone in your hand. Because right now, if you went outside without your mobile phone, you might be worried, you might be fearful because your mind has craving. But you can choose to leave this at home over multiple different days and sessions to get to the point where you're no longer attached to it. And then when your mind's no longer attached to it, then you can actually start carrying it again. And now you're not attached to it, but you have it and you can use it because it's a helpful tool. And you can do this with each individual thing that's in your life. You don't have to strip your life down to 2 robes and a bowl in order to get to enlightenment.
Thanks. One more question. The word maras, like at the
Maras,
top there. Yeah, can you define that?
Yeah, what Mara is a formless being that is typically associated with the hell realm, and the Amara is trying to cause calamity and unwholesome things in the world. And this being is going to try to influence you to do unwholesome things. It's ultimately your choice of what you choose to do or not. But Mara and beings working on Mara's behalf will try to influence you to do unwholesome things. But once you get to what's called the jhanas, the 4 phases that the mind experiences that are enhanced qualities of mind before you get to the first stage of enlightenment, Mara won't try to influence you anymore because Mara knows that you're too wise, and at that point you're unable to be influenced. But up until that point, Mara can potentially attempt to influence you or beings on Mara's behalf. Just like if you had a human being, like a friend or a family member who's like, hey, Adrian, come over here. Let's do some gambling, or let's go cheat on our partners, or let's go steal something, or let's go snort some cocaine or something like this, right? If those people could potentially influence you, it's still your decision of whether you go do those things. That's where your wisdom comes in. You need to know what's wise and unwise, but these individuals can influence you. This being can do the same thing, and they're interested in causing calamity, but whether you choose to do things that way or not is your choice. Any other questions here or online that you guys have? Yes, ma'am. If you could get a microphone. It's not quite on yet.
Is First time for me to hear those teachings from Buddha, and I've got a question that bothered me for a while, because Buddha's teachings are supposed to be perfect with true wisdom, but how do we understand it? Why when he refers to people as the sons of Brahmins or the princes of Brahmins without referring to daughters or women? How do we understand this?
So in this particular teaching, he's talking to a male, but all throughout his other teachings, you will see that he talks about females too. He teaches women as well. Sometimes people think that because the teachings of the Buddha are from 2,500 years ago, that he must have denigrated women. He must have looked down on women. This isn't actually true. If you read the original teachings of the Buddha, you will never see anywhere that he denigrates anybody, including women. Nowadays, you might see someone who considers them what they're doing to be Buddhist, and they might denigrate women, or they might denigrate a minority class or something like that, but the Buddha never did. And this is one of the beauties about getting back to his original teachings and seeing what he actually taught, is you can see the truth about what he did teach and what he didn't teach. And you can see that there's people today that are grossly misunderstanding his teachings. So in this particular teaching, he's talking about an ordained practitioner who is a male that actually ordains as a male practitioner, but during his lifetime, he ordained females too. Here in Thailand, there's mostly males that are ordained because Buddhism came, what we think happened is from Sri Lanka over to Thailand, and it came by water. And when they came by ship, it was only the men who came. So when they established Buddhism here in Thailand, it was only male ordained practitioners. But in the last 20 years, females have decided to reinvigorate the female ordained path. So they went back to Sri Lanka, because places like Sri Lanka and other places in the world, they have female ordained practitioners, and they got ordained in Sri Lanka, and they came here to Thailand, switched their robes, and now there's female ordained practitioners here in Thailand. There's about 300 to 400 of them in Thailand. So the Buddha taught women. He taught them very respectfully. He actually taught men as well, and he taught men to respect women, and he taught women to respect men. He taught everybody as equal. You can see in his teachings, he never teaches a hierarchy. He never teaches a pecking order, because that's exactly the opposite of what he was teaching. The thing in the mind that creates that is called conceit. Conceit is where you're like arrogant and prideful and boastful, putting yourself above people, thinking you're superior, or putting yourself below people, thinking you're inferior. And both of these are actually dangerous for the mind, putting yourself above people or below people. So he taught to eradicate this out of the mind. In fact, tomorrow, this is what I'm going to be teaching as part of our group learning program. I'm going to be teaching what the ego is and how to eliminate it from the mind, where you can see everybody as equal and be humble. And this is the teaching of the Buddha, where he taught everybody to think of each other as equal. Because if you put yourself above people, you're going to talk down to people, and you're not going to have harmonious relationships in this situation. But also, if you put yourself below people, maybe like a boss or a celebrity or something like this, your mind's going to be all shaken up in that situation too, and you're not going to be able to perform very well. So sometimes people have the perspective that the Buddha taught in a degrading, diminishing way towards some group of people, like women, but this isn't actually true. You'll see people doing that today, perhaps, that considers what they're doing Buddhist, but the Buddha never did that. And those people who are teaching that way, they've misunderstood the teachings of the Buddha. And the Buddha teaches this in his teachings. He says, if you ever see anybody teaching something that is in conflict with what he taught, he said, you should consider that this person has misunderstood his teachings, and you should ignore that teaching. So this is the benefit of studying with the original words of the Buddha. You'll see what is the truth about what he taught, and then you'll see that it's actually working with the improvement to the condition of your mind in your life. Yeah, you're welcome. You don't have to turn the mic on just for that, but you're welcome. All right. Yes, ma'am. You have a question? Or are you just playing with your hair? You have a question? No? Okay. I saw your hand moving around. Okay. Let me see if we have anything online. Sometimes we have folks ask questions on Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom. Nice to see all of you guys here this morning, or evening, or afternoon, whatever time it is for you. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions, so let's move to the next one. By the way, what you guys have here is you have the original words of the Buddha in these books. You then have a reference, which goes back to the original source teachings in the Pali Canon, so you can see where this comes from, because this is an excerpt. Remember, we've consolidated the book series here, so you can go back to the original and see where this comes from, because the Buddha was probably teaching something before this or after this, and you might be interested to see that. So that's what that reference is there for. And then you've got words from me to be able to help you to understand how they connect to other teachings and how to integrate them into your life. Okay, so now we'll go to this next one. This one is chapter 2 of volume 8. Would anyone like to read this one? Yeah, sure. I see a bunch of hands. Whoever would like to go, you guys are welcome. Oh, Rachel's going to go? Okay. Go for it. By the way, Rachel, this one is quite long. So what I'm going to have you do is I'm going to have you read to a certain point, and then I'll stop you, and then we'll kind of talk about it.
Paying homage to the 6 directions. Well, Venerable Sir, how should one pay homage, respect to the 6 directions according to the noble discipline? It would be good if the perfectly enlightened one were to teach me the proper way to pay homage to the 6 directions according to the noble discipline. Young householder, it is by abandoning the 4 defilements of action, by not doing evil with the 4 causes, by not following the 6 ways of wasting one's substance, through avoiding these 14 evil ways that the noble discipline covers the 6 directions, and by such practice becomes a conqueror of both worlds, so that all will go well with him in this world and the next. And at the breaking up of the body after death, he will go to a good destination, a heavenly world. What are the 4 defilements of action that are abandoned? Taking life is one, taking what is not given is one, sexual misconduct is one, false speech is one. These are the 4 defilements of action that he abandons. What are the 4 causes of evil from which to refrain? Evil action springs from craving, it springs from anger, ill will. It springs from ignorance, unknowing of true reality. It springs from fear. If the noble disciple does not act out of craving, anger, ignorance, or fear, he will not do evil from any one of the 4 causes. In which are the 6 ways of wasting one's substance that he does not follow? Addiction to strong drink and sloth-producing drugs, substances that cause heedlessness, is one way of wasting one's substance. Haunting the streets at unfitting times is one, attending fairs is one, being addicted to gambling is one, keeping unwholesome company is one, habitual idleness is one. And how, householder's son, does the noble disciple protect the 6 directions? Okay,
we're going to pause here because there's a bunch of stuff under this. So what the Buddha is teaching here is there's an individual who was doing this ceremony, this ritual as part of the things that were being practiced by the population at that time. And mainly what we would refer to that as is Hinduism. So they have this ceremony where they pay homage in these 6 directions, to the north, south, east, west, to the zenith, which is above you, and to the nadar, which is below you. And this ceremony or this ritual was something that they were practicing. And the Buddha is kind of walking down the street and encounters this individual. And this individual is like, hey, what would I do in your teachings based on the way you teach? What would I do in order to accomplish the same thing? And the Buddha is about to teach him what to do in order to be able to do this, but it's not a rite or ritual or ceremony or worship. But he sets it up with this first. He talks about this defilement of action, these 4 causes, the 6 ways of wasting one's substance, and so forth and so on. And he's teaching this kind of thing. And he's kind of setting this up. And he talks about the 4 defilements of action are things like taking life, meaning killing, taking what is not given, which is stealing, sexual misconduct, and then false speech. These are things that are in the 5 precepts that the Buddha expands upon and gives you illuminating language. What the Buddha is doing is he's not giving you rules and commandments to follow. He's showing you this cause and effect, or this action and result, the results of your decisions. It's referred to as the natural law of Gama, or some people might have heard the word karma, because one of the things that we do is with our lack of wisdom in the unenlightened state, we go out into the world and we make unwise decisions based on the natural law of karma, we then experience unwholesome results in our life. And oftentimes when we're experiencing unwholesome results, we blame it on other people. That's what the unenlightened mind does, because it lacks the wisdom of this natural law, and it doesn't understand that what you're experiencing in life, whether it's wholesome or unwholesome, it's coming from decisions that you're making. But as long as you go out into the world and you blame other people for what you're experiencing, then you won't ever be able to cultivate the wisdom to make different decisions and experience different results. So what people oftentimes think with the lack of wisdom is they think that what they're experiencing in their day-to-day life is either good luck or bad luck. Or they think that it's destiny or fate, or they might think that it's God or some supreme being that's controlling what you experience. Or you might think it's from other people that are causing you to experience certain things. And in each one of these scenarios, that means that you're locked in and you can't change anything about your life. Because if what you experience on a day-to-day basis is good luck or bad luck, you can't change that. Or if it's destiny or fate, meaning it's predetermined, then you can't change that. If it's God or some other entity or being that's controlling what you experience on a day-to-day basis, you can't change that. Or if it's other people that are causing you to experience certain things, once again, you can't change other people. So you're basically locked in. And that's like a defeating way to look at the world, that you're basically like, all right, well, I can't do anything to change my life. I'm just going to live this miserable life. But this isn't what the Buddha was teaching. He was teaching this natural law of karma, that you can cultivate this wisdom of these natural laws. And now when you understand these natural laws and you have the wisdom of them, you can make improved decisions to experience improved results. Because if there's anything in your life that you don't particularly care for, all you need to do is cultivate wisdom, make different decisions, and you will experience different results. But if it's any of these other things I just mentioned, you're locked in. You can't do anything about that. So if we cause harm by taking someone's life, or we steal, or we have sexual misconduct, or we have lies in our speech, we're making unwise decisions that is causing harm, and now harm is going to come back to us. And the Buddha expands upon this, and he really illuminates this in the 5 precepts to be able to understand what these things are. Because right here, just understanding like, okay, not doing sexual misconduct, your question is probably like, well, what is that? What is sexual misconduct? Remember, this program is a program that people tend to come into after they've already studied the foundational teachings. The 5 precepts is the foundational teachings as part of that, where the Buddha has the very clear and concise language about what sexual misconduct is. For example, he talks about having sex with minors, or having sex without consent, or going outside of relationships that you're in, things like this. And these are all going to create harm. And you can see this in your own life. This is why people have sexually transmitted diseases. This is why someone might get beat up or murdered. If you go outside of your relationship and have sex, it's very unwise, because people are attached to you. And this is where people sometimes get murdered over those kinds of things. And this is decisions that an individual is choosing to make. Or if we chose to have sex without consent, this is really unwise. Like if we were raping someone, we're causing harm to this individual. So the Buddha goes into detail about all of these things, but right here, he's just kind of doing it in a summary form, because he's not going to repeat the teachings that he's already shared in another part of his teachings. Then ultimately what he gets to is the whole reason why we actually do things that are unwise, or here the word evil is being used. This is something that you also learn in the foundational teachings, which is called craving, anger, and ignorance. This is called the 3 poisons, or the 3 unwholesome roots, or the 3 fires. What craving is your longing, yearning. You're chasing after the objects of your affection. It's like the mind's selfishness. When you're making decisions based in craving, your longing, your yearning, your own selfishness, wanting things to be self-pleasing all the time, it's going to produce unwholesome results for you. When you make decisions through anger or ill will, the bitterness and the harshness and the hostility in your mind, it's going to produce unwholesome results. And you can see this in your own life. This is where you don't believe what I'm sharing with you. When you've made decisions through anger and bitterness and hostility, you can see it's led to broken relationships. It's led to maybe you losing a job, or losing a job opportunity, or things like this. It's caused difficulties in your life. And where all of that is coming from is something called the unknowing of true reality, or ignorance, or the misunderstanding or confusion that the mind has. This is why you're guided to cultivate wisdom on this path. You're not a follower. You're not a devotee. You're not believing in anything, but instead you're cultivating wisdom. And that's what's going to antidote this unknowing of true reality, so you can see the truth that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. So as long as an individual is functioning through craving, anger, and ignorance, or through the resulting fear, then it's going to lead to unwise decisions. And now you're going to experience these unwholesome results in your day-to-day life. So the Buddha teaches not to function through those things, and his tools and techniques and his entire path is helping you to be able to not function through those by training your mind and uprooting those pollutions out of the mind. Then he talks about the 6 ways of wasting one's substance. What your substance is like your vitality or your vigor, like your ability to improve your life and be productive in life. And he's talking about these 6 things that are going to lead to wasting your vitality and your vigor in your life. The first one is taking substances that cause heedlessness. If we become drunk or intoxicated with substances, it's wasting our vitality, our vigor, our ability to be productive and successful in life. So he's showing you this cause and effect. Whether you choose to do these things or not, totally up to you. The Buddha's already peaceful. The Buddha's already completely joyful. Whether you choose to do these things or not is your choice. He's just showing you what leads to a peaceful and joyful life. And as long as somebody's taking in substances that cause heedlessness, you'll never get to peace and joy, because your mind's going to be polluted with these substances and cause your mind to have this lack of concentration, and you're going to make unwise decisions when you're functioning through these substances. For any of us who have taken substances before, we can see the truth of the matter, that when we're drunk, when we're intoxicated, when we're high on drugs or other substances, it leads to unwholesome results in our life. That's what the Buddha is showing you. So he's saying, yes, this will lead to wasting your vitality, your vigor, and your ability to be successful in life. He talks about haunting the streets at unfitting times. I don't know about you, but I used to haunt the streets at unfitting times. I really like this phrase. I think it's really funny, because I definitely used to haunt the streets at unfitting times, going out at 12 midnight or 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. in the morning. There's not very many wholesome things going on at that time of day, right? So if we're going out at that time of day, we're into unwholesome things. And that's what he's saying. If you're going out at that time of day, you're not going to be able to create productivity and wholesomeness in your life, because the things that are going on that are wholesome in the world, they're usually going on in daylight hours. If you're going to walk towards the light, meaning walk towards wholesomeness, then you would like to go outside in the daylight hours. But if you're up until 2 a.m., 3 a.m. and haunting the streets at unfitting times, you're probably not going to wake up until like 12 noon, 1 p.m., 2 p.m. And you get on this vicious cycle of going out really late at night and interacting with people who are into unwholesome things and unwise things. So the Buddha teaches you that if you're interested in getting to enlightenment, it's wise to go outside in daylight hours and spend time with people who are doing wholesome things, rather than haunting the streets at unfitting times. I never realized that's what I was doing when I was actually doing it, but I really like this phrase. Attending fairs. What he's talking about here is during his lifetime, essentially the main entertainment that people had was going to these fairs. Nowadays, we have all kinds of things that we do, like going to the movies. We, maybe search social media. We play on YouTube or all these other things. There's no harm in us doing these kinds of things, but it's when we can't put it down, that's the problem. The problem isn't that we pick up YouTube or Facebook or Instagram or any of these other things. The problem is that your mind has so much craving, it can't put it back down. And now you spend this exorbitant amount of time doing this. And now that takes away from your vitality, your vigor, your ability to be productive and successful in life. So you would like to get to the point where you're not wasting your substance on just indulging in entertainment. Sure, you're going to have a certain amount of entertainment in your life, but then you would like to balance that out with a certain amount of activities that you're doing to create productivity and success in your life. If you're only going towards the entertainment, then you're not able to create productivity and success in your life. Being addicted to gambling is one. This is like where you're going out into the world and you just want money, and you're gambling and trying to make money. eventually you're going to lose, right? That's how they build casinos, is through the profits that they get from the people who are gambling. You're not going to walk out of there a millionaire, but if you go there, you're going to waste your substance. You're going to waste your vitality and your vigor. This money that would have otherwise been used to help you gain new skills or new abilities to go out into the world and be successful, it's been spent in this gambling and this craving, this desire to be able to have more and more wealth and more money. Keeping unwholesome company, what he's talking about there is having friends or individuals that you associate with that are into unwholesome things. We shouldn't ever judge other people. We should never look down on people. That's unwise. But you can make wise decisions about who to associate with. That if you're involved with people who are doing any of those things that he mentioned earlier, like taking drugs or stealing or having sexual misconduct or lying or things like this, your decision to be associated with these types of individuals are going to bring you down. So you're never interested in judging other people and looking down on them, but you can make wise decisions. Whereas if you see someone who's into those kinds of unwholesome things, you can choose to not associate in those kinds of situations. You can just choose to go away. You don't have to tell the person anything. You don't have to explain to them anything. You can just choose to walk away and move on from the relationship. And then lastly, he's talking about habitual idleness. What this is like complacency, where you're just sitting around and not really motivated to do anything. You don't have ambition and vigor and vitality to be able to go forward in life and actually apply your time and effort and energy towards developing your life. So this is something that's going to waste your substance, meaning you're not going to be able to have this vitality to go forward in life and create successful life for yourself. So he's showing you these things. So on your own, if you like, you can choose to eradicate these kinds of things where you're not doing these kinds of things, because that's what's going to produce the best results for you in your day-to-day life. But again, whether you do that or not, it's your choice. You're going to experience the results of that. If we chose to be complacent and idle and not really put forth effort in developing our life, we'll experience the results of that. If we choose to take substances that pollute our mind, we'll experience the results of that. Or any of these other things. If we choose to do that, we experience the results of that. The Buddha is just helping you to understand this cause and effect, or this action and result. And then with that wisdom, you can do something with it, make better decisions, and you'll experience better results. So here, rather than read this because it's quite long, what I'm going to do is just show you what the Buddha is teaching you here. If you would like to read this at another time, you can. What he's essentially doing is he's going through different relationships that you have. He's explaining to this individual who's used to kind of worshiping each one of these directions. He's essentially saying, instead of worshiping these 6 directions, instead there's a certain practice that's going to lead to beneficial results in your life. And this first direction that he's talking about is the Eastern direction, which represents your mother and father. And what the Buddha is saying here is that it would be wise for you to support your parents, meaning help them in whatever ways that you can. And you're going to have to figure those kinds of things out, because your relationship with your parents may not be where you would like it to be, but you can improve that. Right now, you might not have the very best relationship with your parents, but you can improve upon that if you train your own mind. And what the Buddha is saying, having been supported by your parents, because they all supported us, otherwise we wouldn't be a sustainable adult at this point. They helped us to a certain degree to get up on our feet and be independently capable of taking care of ourselves, that having been supported by our parents, we would be interested to then support them back. We would like to then perform their duties, like where they're, like my son sometimes, like last night, I asked them, hey, can you take my white clothes downstairs and put them in the trunk of my car, because I'd like to take them to the cleaner today. And he's like, all right, sure. And he takes them downstairs and he puts them into the trunk. So this is like performing their duties, helping them with the things that they need help with. I will keep my family tradition. During the lifetime of the Buddha, that if your family was like blacksmiths or a shopkeeper or something like this, you would essentially do the same exact craft that they were doing. And that was during the lifetime of the Buddha. It's a little bit different now. You don't necessarily do that during this time. But if you had a certain family that were blacksmiths, for example, they had built up a certain reputation in the community, they had built up a certain amount of gamma that the community knows that this family is really good at this particular skill or this particular trade. As you were coming up, you would kind of take on that same trade. Where today, we kind of follow our own interest, which is completely fine because you can do whatever it is that you are interested in doing. You don't have to follow what your family was doing. But during the lifetime of the Buddha, that was the way that they would do things. I will be worthy of my heritage. This is like your tradition of your family and the inheritance that you're receiving. After my parents' death, I will distribute gifts on their behalf. What this is practicing generosity. That one of the things that people will do is they will practice generosity, which is giving and sharing, more than is strictly required in any given situation without any expectation of anything in return, because this is going to help to train your mind to let go. Because what's causing your mind to be discontent, where you're angry and frustrated and all these other feelings, is your mind is holding on. You're wanting things to be a certain way. So that meditation we did this morning, breathing mindfulness meditation, that's training your mind to let go. But so is generosity, where you train your mind to let go. So at the time of the death of your parents, there's the potential that your mind is going to be attached. If you haven't done the work that you need in order to train your mind to let go, if you're craving and you're attached and you're holding on to your parents, wanting them to be permanent, when they die, you will grieve and you'll have sorrow. It's not love that's causing this. You can actually experience the death of a family member or someone close to you and not grieve and not be sorrow. You can just maintain your appreciation and gratitude for the time that you've had with this person. But oftentimes, particularly with parents, people are attached to them. But you can do the work before they actually die, that you don't have to be attached. You don't have to experience grief and sorrow when your family members die. When my mom died in 2017, I didn't grieve because I trained my mind to eliminate the attachment early in my life so that by the time she died, there was no grief or sorrow or sadness. But of course, I loved my mom. So you can actually love someone without actually grieving and being sorrow. But as an unenlightened being, your mind wouldn't know how to do that. So because people are oftentimes attached to their parents, when they die, if they haven't done the work to get to enlightenment, what the Buddha is suggesting that you do is you practice generosity and you distribute gifts on their behalf. And this is what's going to help you to be able to train your mind to let go of your parents. So ideally, you would train your mind to eliminate your attachment before your parents die. So that way you don't have to be shaken up and discontent and sorrowful and grieving when they do die. But if you haven't done that, or even if you have done that, the Buddha is suggesting to you to practice generosity, which is going to train your mind to let go. And this will help you so that your mind doesn't have to have that sorrow and that grief and that despair when your parents die. And then the Buddha is saying, okay, having done those things for your parents, this is what your parents will do for you as a particular result. He's showing you the natural law of karma. He's not giving you rules. He's not telling you what you should or shouldn't do. He's just saying, hey, this is what you're going to experience. That having done those things with your parents, that then your parents will restrain you from evil. Right? That they will help you to be able to see what is wise and unwise and restrain you from anything that might be evil. That he's saying that they will support you in doing good things. That they will teach you some skill to help you be able to grow and develop. They will help you find a suitable life partner. This is something that would happen during the lifetime of the Buddha, is they would help you to be able to find a partner. And nowadays, our parents even do that to a certain degree, right? If we have a certain partner that we might bring home, our parents might be there to give us some advice, but you need to take that with a grain of salt, because oftentimes your parents are attached to you. If I would have listened to my family about who to be with, I wouldn't have been with anybody, because no matter who I brought home, they didn't like anybody, right? Because they're attached to you. They don't want you to leave out of the house. So you need to be able to take that with a grain of salt. But during the lifetime of the Buddha, they would help you to find a partner. And then he says, in due time, the parents would hand over their inheritance to their child. So I'm not going to go through all of these, but there's actually a whole bunch of them here that the Buddha is giving you guidance and helping you to be able to see this cause and effect, helping this individual learn how to practice teachings rather than just worshiping. So if you guys have questions on this, I'll take whatever questions you guys have. You have anything that you would like to ask on this particular discourse? Looks like Adrian has a question.
Down a bit. it's got the three unwholesome roots, right?
Mm-hmm.
Under evil action.
Mm-hmm.
And then you said, and a result of that would be the fear. So is fear like a result of a combination of like those three unwholesome roots, or is it like kind of like another teaching, or like, can you elaborate?
Sure. So fear is a discontent feeling, right? It's a very painful feeling for the mind to experience. Whenever there's any kind of conditional feelings in the mind, it's always coming from craving, desire, attachment. That's the longing, the yearning. The mind wants things to be a certain way. The mind's craving permanence. So for example, if someone sees a spider and they have fear, that's because their mind's craving to never see a spider. They're having a longing, yearning. They want things to be a certain way. So because of that craving to never see a spider, when they see a spider, their mind becomes fearful. So whenever you have a craving, desire, attachment, there's always going to be a discontent feeling. That's where I talk about the anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, all these other feelings. There's always going to be a craving, desire, attachment in the mind. When there's craving, desire, attachment in the mind, that means there's always going to be this ignorance or this unknowing of true reality, that the mind just doesn't understand what it doesn't understand. It doesn't understand how to purify it of its own cravings, desires, attachments. There's this lack of wisdom. So even when someone understands the Four Noble Truths intellectually, and they've reflected on it and they've seen that it's true, because that's where you learn about the craving, the mind hasn't fully practiced it yet in order to be able to eradicate the cravings from the mind. So whenever the mind is discontent or otherwise unenlightened, then there's always going to be ignorance in the mind. The mind just lacks wisdom about certain aspects of the natural laws. So by eradicating the unknowing of true reality, the lack of wisdom, the confusion, the misunderstanding, you will then eradicate the craving. So anger is more of like the bitterness, the harshness, the hostility. That's what somebody can experience once the fear is in the mind, because now the mind is fearful. On top of that, there can be anger and frustration and ill will. Like say somebody had a pet spider and they brought it over to this person. And now because of their craving to never see a spider, their fear arises, and now they become bitter and harsh and hostile towards that person, thinking that that person is causing the problem, when in reality it's coming from one's own mind. So that's where the ignorance is. So all of these three poisons or three pollutions are typically involved in any given situation where the mind is experiencing discontentedness, including fear. So fear is what springs up in the mind because of these three things. But there's other discontent feelings that springs up in the mind too because of those three things as well.
All right, thanks. Yeah, and down a bit too, he says, an addiction to gambling.
Mm-hmm.
Being addicted to gambling.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only time that I've seen him reference being addicted in relation to gambling, and I'm wondering, like with the five precepts, that I don't know, like the five precepts says don't gamble or like refrain from gambling.
The five precepts doesn't have anything about gambling.
Okay, so maybe I'm misunderstanding one of the teachings, but yeah, one of the teachings says refrain from gambling.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, like I just want to know, like what would you classify as being addicted? Like, is it okay to like go play poker and like as a livelihood, right? Like, to make money, because some people do that, but like other people consider that gambling. Yeah.
The Buddha's not giving you what is okay and what is not okay, right? He's not giving you rules and commandments to follow. He's showing you how your mind functions and how to get to this peace and this joy. As long as you have craving, desire, attachment, where the mind's longing, yearning, you're not going to get to permanent peace and permanent joy. So if you do any amount of gambling, meaning playing a game of chance, in order for the opportunity to win some kind of prize or money or something like this, you're not going to be peaceful and joyful and content, because your mind's going to long and yearn to win. And when you win, you get happy. And when you don't win, you get sad or frustrated or agitated, right? So this addicted to gambling, he's just saying like, yeah, if you're addicted to gambling, you're going to waste your substance. But even if you gamble at all, you're still having craving, desire, attachment in your mind, and you're not going to be able to get to the peace and joy that he's teaching you as part of the enlightened mental state. So while you haven't seen this before, there's multiple places in his teachings where he mentions gambling, because this is one of the things that people did. And sometimes people see it as entertainment, but it's actually coming from the mind's craving, the longing, the yearning. And as long as that's in there, you won't get to the permanent peace and joy. So again, whether you choose to do these things or not, your choice. But if you would like to get to the peace and joy that is enlightenment, you would need to eliminate the gambling, which is going to help you to eliminate your craving in your mind to long and yearn, and therefore your mind won't be experiencing discontentedness. Mm-hmm. All right. So right now it's basically about 10:40. I usually take this class up to about 10:30, 11 o'clock. I'm going to pause here. In the evening classes, we do this at 9 p.m. I do it from home, and we don't do meditation together. We go through 10 chapters in the evening. So if you guys are interested in studying all 10 chapters, because I do 10 chapters a week, then I do that, and we make sure that we cover all 10. I do it through live stream, through Facebook, YouTube, and Zoom, and I do it from home. And like I mentioned, we don't do meditation as part of it, but when you guys come here as part of the temple, we usually do some meditation, which takes up just a little bit of time, but is helpful for you guys, because many of you guys, it's your first time learning. And if this is your first time learning and coming to a temple like this, understand that this isn't where somebody will typically start. Typically, they will start in a foundational program or a course or something like this. Like tomorrow, you'll see what I do is I do meditation with students, and then I will teach you for an extended period of time. Tomorrow, the topic is chapter 16 in this book, and it's called Dissolving the Ego. Ego serves no purpose. I'm going to teach you guys what the ego is and how to actually eliminate it in a more traditional style of learning, where I'm just kind of talking for like 15, 20, 30 minutes, and then I open up for questions. Then I talk for 15, 20, 30 minutes and open up for questions. So typically a student will start in a foundational program. So this is something that you guys might have walked into and not even realize that we're studying, pretty in depth with some of these teachings. But it's always wonderful to invite people to come in. And if you'd like to come in, you're always welcome to learn in any of our classes. But just understand that students will typically start in a more foundational program, which you guys are welcome to do either here or online throughout our various live streams. So thank you for coming. And if you'd like to learn more, there's tomorrow, there's Wednesday. On Thursday, I'm actually going to be traveling to California. I'm going to be teaching for 2 weeks in California. There's a student who's invited me to come there, and they're hosting some classes there. But I'm still going to be teaching here at the temple during that time frame. There's a few students who have volunteered to set up the computer so that I can actually zoom in to the temple. And instead of sitting here in the chair, I'm going to be up there on the screen to be able to teach students. So if you guys would like to continue to learn, even while I'm traveling, I've set it up in such a way that I can teach you no matter where I am in the world. So thank you all for coming here. Thank you all for being interested to learn. Thank you for your interest to understand the teachings of the Buddha. And if you'd like to learn how to really get started on the path, you're welcome to come talk to me or send me messages or reach out in any way that you'd like, and I'll help you get started on the path to enlightenment. So whatever you choose to do today, have a very wonderful and lovely rest of your day, and perhaps we'll see you next time. Sawadee Kap, Sawadee Kap, Sawadee Kap. watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.